History of language, animal communication and language. Many of the linguists believe that language is a human behavior and animals fall short of this human behavior. Previously, it was known that only the sound was the communication medium of animal. However, in the 20th century and since 19th century and 20th century, it has been known that animals do have some other medium or media of communication. So let's look at these things, that how do animals communicate. Chemo communication. Some of the animals do chemical communication. They emit some chemicals from their bodies, let's say to mark off their boundaries or to tell their mates about their existence in a certain area. They also used very complex methods of communication like infrasound, like ultrasound communication. This is other than body language. Each type of language used in nature differs. So different animals use different language, and every language is different from that of others. So we have a varied media of communication in the animal kingdom. So let's see that how do they communicate. The definition of language is language signifies medium of information exchange. If we look at this definition, we can find that all the non-verbal communication, gesture, postures, sign languages, mathematical languages, programming languages, all these languages come under this definition, because the basic, according to this definition, the basic purpose of language is to exchange information, and language is a medium for this exchange of information. For example, we find that bioacoustics exchange of information. Bioacoustic exchange of information is that animal emit some sounds which communicate them. If we look at the human beings, for example, a young 15 years old male can hear the openness and closeness of a conversation about 10 octaves. That is from 30 to 18,000 hertz. So this is the frequency at which a 15 years old male can listen to a conversation. However, many animals communicate below or over this frequency. For example, infrasound. Infrasound is the communication that is below this frequency. That is below this frequency. For example, we know that bats, dolphins, and many insects communicate in this frequency. Similarly, ultrasound frequency. This is above 18,000 hertz. So we see that many animals communicate at this frequency. For example, whales, for example, earthquakes and volcanoes have this frequency. History of language considered history of human language. It has been seen that the history of languages is only considered that it is the history of human beings, whereas it is not so. Vocal communication of amphibians. We have seen that researchers spent quite some time on the vocal communication of amphibians in the recent past, but they have not yet come up with a frog language so far. The most primitive form of communication, the animal communication, is the most primitive form of communication that we have. Communication through pheromones. So as I said that certain insects like ants, they discharge certain chemicals from their bodies, right, through their glands, and this communicates other members of the same family. So if we look at language of ants, we find that ants communicate through this pheromones. For example, ants, there are almost 12,000 to 14,000 species of ants on the planet, and each family of ant is in millions, more than one can think of. They have at least 50 body language messages other than the chemical communication that they make. Similarly, we see bees. Bees, it was an Austrian zoologist who found that bees have a very sophisticated method of communication. Other than their buzz, they communicate through these secretions of their bodies. For example, through the dance of their bodies, they tell other bees that the quality of the honey, the quantity of the honey. They make a figure of 8 to tell where the location is, and how they can get this honey. Similarly, birds, they do communicate. They have some of the birds do not make any sound, but other don't stop chattering. So we see that there are parrots, there are macaw, there are other animals who are all the time busy making certain sound. So we can say that animal communication is very rich. They communicate through other media of communication, like as we have seen that they have infrasound, they have ultrasound, they have bioacoustics. So there are so many things that they have, and they can communicate with these things. Is there truly non-human language? So this is the question, whether there is a non-human language or not. So far as we have discussed, we can safely conclude that there is definitely non-human language, and this language has many rich media of communication.